Hello everyone, this is Giselle. I'm here to introduce today's guest speaker, Po-Shen Loh. Professor Loh is an amazing mathematician and educator. He's a professor of mathematics at Cornell University and the national coach of the USA International Mathematics Olympiad team. Professor Loh had won a silver medal for the US team as a participant in 1999. As a coach, he led the USA Math Olympiad team to victories in 2015, 2016, 2018. Their first victory since 1994. Professor Loh is the founder of the website Lexi, which contains videos about topics and interesting problems in math and science. He is here today to share his experiences. There will be enough time for people with questions too. So please welcome Professor Loh.
There's a pain that affects millions, billions of people worldwide. It actually primarily affects the young people, ages about 5 to 18. It causes all sorts of awful side effects, such as it causes your head to hurt, mouth to become dry. Some people even say it raises their heart rate. It's called math. Well, such a widespread pain certainly needs a cure. I unfortunately am not a real doctor, but I can doctor some math. I think that this pain is indeed real, but at the same time, there are some people who can find out that it's actually not painful at all. In fact, it's actually a lot of fun. There's a lot of pleasure. It lets you see the world in a very interesting way. And so one of my goals is to try to help all people around the world to realize that this requirement to be able to think is actually fun. So when I started to do all of this was around when I became the national coach of the US Math Olympiad team. I was attending a conference at Oxford University where a number of us were talking about different ways to try to help people become better at math in many different countries around the world. It was in Oxford, so obviously there were many countries from Europe. I guess I was the American representative talking about what we do here. I distinctly remember that on the second day of the conference, in the morning, it suddenly dawned on me the following realization. At this conference, we're all talking about interesting ways to try to use government funding, philanthropic funding, to try to help more people be better at math. But wait a second. Let me compare two things. How much government educational budget is spent trying to teach math to everyone in the world? How much government educational budget is spent trying to teach everyone how to play basketball? But how come everyone can attempt to shoot a hoop? I say attempt because some of us don't succeed with 100% probability. In fact, nobody does, right? There are different levels of attempt. But this is kind of odd, because somehow there's this vast discrepancy in the amount of investment. But wait a second. Let me ask a different question. How much advertising, media, movie storylines, campaigns are spent trying to show everyone how basketball is cool and relevant to your life and gives you a great life? Has anyone ever seen an advertisement for math? Ever? Are we actually at zero? You see, in some sense, I saw one hand. Awesome. Okay, one person in this room has seen an advertisement for math. It's okay, we're going to change that into 400 plus in a moment. But this also starts to show that, you see, we human beings are actually capable of doing just about anything you really set your mind to do. That's the beautiful thing about being human. That's actually why we have school. That's why we have all of our human institutions. It's that if a person decides that this is something I want to do, you can really push yourself to pick up whatever skills you need to try to do it. Just don't try to violate the laws of physics. Don't try to go into a black hole and come back. I don't encourage that. We now know they exist. We've seen the picture, right? And it might be just as bad as going to see Sauron. Right. But as we talk about this is another question. But how can we try to see if there's a way to identify the math in everything that we do, or to relate it to what we do? And so that's why I embarked on a campaign to try to create our own little videos about this. I'm happy to show you some clips of the very first project that we made towards this end.
Dude, that's a bus. That's the bus? I know it's not gonna make it.
Obviously a math video, right? Obviously. But that's also the same way that most Apple commercials start. They don't actually tell you what the device is or does. It's just that people are having fun, and at some point there's an Apple somewhere. Fast forward a few seconds into the video.
And since the street in our way create a right triangle, I can use the Pythagorean theorem to beat the bus. I know there are 4 spaces between the telephone poles on the street the bus is currently on, and the street the bus and I were just on has 3 spaces.
Maybe not your usual math video, but this is the Pythagorean theorem. But of course, the Pythagorean theorem helps you win at life as well.
And if I add them together, it makes 25. And the square root of 25 is 5. Pythagorean theorem, man. I gotta learn that.
Christian Braun, the guy with the moves in this video, is actually an aspiring dancer. He's a high school student in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In fact, the storyline and the messaging and the words were all created in collaboration with him and other teenagers from what's called Steelhound's Teen Film Group in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, an organization that brings together teenagers to try to amplify the impact that any one of you can have through the creation of video. Being a YouTube star is actually a very interesting way to contribute to the world. I'll mention this. So, this is an example of the sorts of things that we started to do. By now you're probably wondering, who did you bring here? This is supposedly the national coach of the Math Olympiad team. I hate to break it to you, you brought the wrong person. I'm actually not the national coach of the Math Olympiad team. I'm the head cheerleader of the United States Math Olympiad team. We don't have a coach. What I mean by this is that every single person can be their own coach. When we think about what's our role, I see there are many teachers here, and many of the teachers here are also involved in athletic coaching, as well as academic coaching. What do we do as coaches? We try to help everyone see in themselves a pathway of how what this is that we're trying to do can lead to somewhere that we want to go. This is one component of that. We're all looking for ways to have a fun and rewarding life. But there's something good about math too. Actually, it's useful. I haven't said that yet, in some sense. Actually, so far, the part of this talk has just been talking about how it can be it's a lifestyle. Math is a lifestyle brand, just like Apple. But, math is also useful. And I'd like to show that through the following puzzle, which is a lot of fun. Here are some pictures of a certain drink that you shouldn't drink right now. This is James Bond's favorite drink. It's in a martini glass. And how many people know what the actual shape of a martini glass is? It's a cone, okay? So it's a cone. I'm sure everyone actually knew that somehow from the movies or in real life. But anyway, so you have these 4 martini glasses. I'm asking, which one of these is half full by volume? Volume is relevant because if you're drinking something, it's the volume that matters, right? And so these different options tell you how high the liquid is going up on top. I just want to know what everyone's gut feeling is, and even if you don't calculate the answer, please vote for one of the 4. How many people think that the top left is half full, 33% high is half full? Okay, how many people think the 50% high is half full by volume? Okay, how many people think the 67% high is half full by volume? Look around, I'm not going to count votes, we're just kind of looking. How many people think this 80% high is half full by volume? Yes. Okay, so this is interesting. So now we've heard the audience, we've heard everyone's vote. I will tell you, the first time I saw this problem, my vote was right here too, 67% high. And someone said to me, aren't you supposed to be a mathematician? That's wrong. What? How can that be wrong? That's clearly half full. Just look at that picture, right? Well, this is kind of funny. This is where math comes in. When we don't know for sure, we can try to use a framework of logic, which is what math sets down. And there's something about volume, which says something like this. A Rubik's Cube has the same volume as how many little cubes? Not 3, not 9, but 27. Because if you have any object and you scale it in each dimension by the same amount, then the volume multiplies by that amount, and multiplies by that amount, and multiplies by that amount. Again, because there are 3 dimensions. This liquid actually also forms a cone. So the little cone is a scaled version of the big cone, scaled in all 3 dimensions. The correct answer is actually 80% high. Whoa! Just a second, let's see why. Because if you scale 80% in each dimension, you multiply by 80%, 80%, and 80%. Multiplying 0.8 by 0.8 by 0.8, whether you use a calculator or whether you're a aspiring computer scientist who knows their powers of 2, you'll get that the answer is 0.512, which is fairly high. This is kind of funny. Does that look half full to anyone? No, it does not. And this is actually why I often say, this is what math gives you. It gives you a 6th sense that lets you look at things in the world and realize that sometimes your intuition is wrong. To be honest, if our intuition and gut feelings were always right, you would not need math and you would not need science. You just follow your instincts. But because we do have flaws, because somehow the human race almost universally thinks that this is not half full, this is why we need this framework of logic to think. And the math makes us able to go from something we do not believe at the beginning through a procedure where we follow step after step that we do believe, to ultimately believe it. This is actually why I also said math is just really about thinking. Your teachers are teaching you the triumphs of mathematics, triumphs of mathematicians who have thought about different things in the world and discovered that there are miraculous formulas that can save you lots of time. Like the quadratic formula, by the way, that's a miracle. You know what you'd be? You know what life would be like without the quadratic formula? You have a quadratic equation, and the only way you can solve it would be called guess and check. Now, what if the answer is imaginary? How do you guess that? You see what I mean? There are these miracles in mathematics. Actually, I just raised that because there's a reason you never learn about how to solve equations with the cubic formula. There's actually a formula called the cubic equation formula. The reason is because it's too hard to memorize. Okay. There's another reason. There's another thing though. If you ask about the 5th degree polynomial equation, there's a real reason you don't learn it. It's because it does not exist. This is actually what mathematicians do. They find out the limits between what exists and what doesn't. So maybe the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is how to learn that. Because I mentioned a bit about how this is a pain, right? Well, once you start to see the aha in it helps to become more fun, how it becomes relevant to life, also more fun. And also the method of learning can be more fun too. And to illustrate that, I have another challenge for you. I'm going to show you a picture which has a bunch of random lines, some straight, some squiggly. And it's a complicated drawing that's going to appear on the screen. I will give you 3 seconds to memorize as much of the following picture as you can. Everyone ready? 3 seconds to memorize as much of this squiggly picture as you can. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So, does anyone remember any part of the squiggly picture? Hello, okay. Anyone know any other part of the squiggly picture? So, it all depends on what language you may have learned. In fact, depending on how international the group is here, let's go through them. What's the top left? Does anyone know? Does anyone know what is on the top left? Sorry? I think it's Hindi. I think. I made these slides a while ago, so I don't quite remember. The top right, does anyone know what that is? Arabic. The middle left is obviously English. The middle right is Chinese. The bottom left is Russian, and the bottom right is Hebrew. And what we've just seen here is, in some sense, memorizing the picture is a lot easier if you have certain concepts in your head. Nobody actually memorized this picture in 3 seconds. What they did is that your brain took squiggly lines and found concepts, distilled those concepts, and said, that's actually what's going on here, and you did it, just like that. But would anyone think or even believe that it is actually impossible to memorize all the squiggly lines? Of course it's not impossible. In fact, if you found a 5 or 6-year-old from each of the appropriate countries, they would say, oh, that was easy. What I'm saying is that there's a difference between knowing concepts and trying to memorize. Sometimes when we just use the memorization method, yes, it's painful, it causes headaches, and it actually doesn't work. On the other hand, if you go through the conceptual method, everything is as transparent as looking at a language. My goal is to raise the world's interest and ability in mathematics. So far, you've seen some of the work we do on raising interest. And when it comes to ability, this is also something I started thinking about when I became the national coach of the US math team. Before that, I had been working on the students at my university, Carnegie Mellon University. We really enjoy helping to educate all of the students that we have, and so my focus was there. I was also thinking a bit about the city I live in, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and trying to help students there too. But the moment I had something that was starting to look across the United States, this caused me to think a little bit at a larger scale. To say, is there anything that one person can do to try to push the needle a little bit on the situation across the United States? There's a huge problem with that statement. One person. And to add to the problem, that one person has no money. And no governmental connections and no power. And so what could you possibly hope to do? In fact, I'm saying this because sometimes people, especially at a young age, I hopefully will consider myself one of those, will be thinking, you know, the world has so many problems. Maybe I'm powerless to do anything about it. Let's just do whatever. That's a good way for the world to end before 2100, if we all think this way, right? But at the same time, there are certain things that are now actually possible. So, what inspired me was that there has been a certain breakthrough in technology which allows one person to actually have an impact that could scale into the billions. And to give one example of how this technology is so within arm's reach, so to speak, is let me ask the following question. How many of you have a computer within arm's reach? Yes, so do I. Does anyone know how many mathematical calculations this thing can do every second, even if it's not connected to the internet? A lot, this is correct. Actually, let's be a bit more specific. The speed of the computer processor in a phone, or a laptop, or a server is measured in what units? Gigahertz. What does giga mean? 10 to the power 9 means billion. Hertz means hertz watt. No, it means cycles per second. It means calculations per second. Every single device, whether connected to the internet or not, does several billion mathematical calculations a second. How many people live in the world? 7 giga people, that's correct. It's the same giga. The point is that any computer these days can actually project enough computational power to try to help everyone with something, if everyone just needs a few calculations. And a computer only costs about $1,000 a year. You might say $1,000 a year sounds like a lot, until you realize that that is serving a billion people. So then I decided to start a social enterprise. So this is actually something which was mentioned in the introduction. Raise interest and ability in mathematics. You can raise all the interest you want, but if there's no way for people to engage once they have that interest, it doesn't go anywhere. This is just like why basketball works so well. Because once everyone's interested in basketball, you can just put up a basketball hoop and everyone can do it. So we needed to create the analog for engaging in mathematics. And so this is a website actually I created with a team of very talented students at Carnegie Mellon University and other students I've worked with before, where we make something that on your smartphone can actually try to teach you concepts, walking you through different concepts as you go. But we wanted to add back the interest component, so maybe to sum up a little bit about what XP tries to do. It's free, by the way. What XP tries to do is to try to go back to the roots of interest. And that's inspired by YouTube, television, and radio. Why do we actually enjoy entertainment? It's because we have a choice. It's because we can choose which kind of music we like to listen to or what kind of movies we want to watch. So what we thought is, wouldn't it be great if whenever you're trying to learn anything, you also could choose between a number of different ways of explaining it. For all you know, one of those ways might actually be a YouTube video that one of your teachers recorded. That's a legitimate way to choose. But we wanted to create a way so that everyone could see in one shot all these different ways to explain, maybe, the Pythagorean theorem. Actually, it looks like we had 16 things. And this is made in a way where we even use crowdsourcing, where we allow anyone, any teacher, any person in the world to contribute to this global project of collecting interesting ways to explain each topic in math and science, to bring the education and hopefully the entertainment back together. These are some examples of the things that I work on. Ultimately, if you ask me what I actually do, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what my career or job really are. Formally speaking, I am all those things that was mentioned in the introduction. I am a math professor, I am the founder of an education technology social enterprise, and I am the national coach of the Math Olympiad team. But what I do know is I just know that I wake up every morning thinking, how do I use whatever I know how to do to make the world a more thinking place? And that's it. Thank you. I intentionally left about 10 minutes left for Q&A because that's actually the most fun part. If you just have me talking, you could have actually just watched the YouTube video of that TED Talk. Does anyone have any questions? It could be about anything. Yes?
How do you go about making something to get like science or math into the hands of like little kids?
How do you make something to get science or math into the hands of little kids? That is a really important question because actually a lot of our interests are formed when we're little. I seriously believe that media and entertainment are the ways that one would start to engage with the youngest audience. It is very hard to tell a 5-year-old to sit down for a 1-hour physics lecture. It's a lot easier for them to see some examples of something's happening, and more importantly, for them to see examples of how it's glorious to discover things, like the picture of the first black hole. I will say one of my feelings is that the world would be a better place if there was actually some media created, specifically with positive viewpoints of science, as well as some real value inside. let me continue on that question a little bit to say some of my own experiences with this and why we actually went to create our own videos. I've actually before, earlier in my life, had been involved in a meeting of two worlds, where the National Academy of Sciences, which represents science and actually in some sense also math in the United States, held a joint workshop with some Hollywood screenwriters trying to inform the next generation, the next years of, let's say, movies about how they would talk about mathematics. I mean, these screenwriters were the real deal, and one of them was working on these Marvel movies, right? So, in this meeting, what I discovered is when you create movies for commercial Hollywood, you start by making some diagrams about characters. Actually, I'm sure everybody learned in English class here. You say, every character, let's make a little card, 3x5 little card, draw a line down the middle, strengths, weaknesses, because you know, every Superman needs a kryptonite, or else it's not interesting for commercial purpose. Great! So we were doing this exercise, and then we found out that we invariably ran into a huge problem. Because the moment you put in strengths, can think like it's somehow intellectual or intelligent, well, you gotta put some weaknesses there. You get that stereotypical Sheldon from the Big Bang Theory emerges. And that's also why you see all of the Hollywood characters have these standard ways, because somehow once you put it in that category, the other one has to have something else. Then I said, why does there have to be a weakness? Well, because if it's for media, it does. Except that when you think about that Apple commercial, does that person have a single weakness? You don't want them to. That's the difference. The difference is called if you have a plan and you go creative, then you can actually change. One of my crazy goals in life is actually someday to be directly contributing towards solving the problem you just said by trying to go around the traditional Hollywood methods and maybe do it our own way. Thank you. Another question. Hi. So you said high school is the time when people sort of decide to be math and science people or humanities people. Do I think it's possible to be both? So here's what I'll say. I'll do a quick mathematical calculation. 24 times 7 is 168. That's your limit on the number of hours a week. Please also sleep, okay? But still, you have a fixed limit on your time. So of course we can't have everyone be everything, right? It's wise, by the way, to make sure you cover a bunch of bases. But there's one more thing you can say. That's only per week. You can also be a lifelong learner. You don't actually have to stop at the end of high school. In fact, these days, I'm actually still learning. So I'm 36. I've actually continued learning my entire life. My way of going through life is very simple. I'm just addicted to challenge. I'd like to do today something I couldn't do yesterday, and I'd like to keep moving forward in this way. And you don't have to actually stop learning. Just to give some examples of the sort of things I'm learning today, which I didn't know when I was in high school. These days I take two kinds of classes in the evenings. One is Chinese, because even though I may look Chinese, I was born in the United States and spoke English at home. And the second one is improvisational comedy. Why not? It also makes it a lot easier to give these kinds of speeches. But to be perfectly honest, like when I was in high school, I was not that theater person. I was like a mathy person. But you don't have to stop there. You can just keep going and going and going. So I'd like to encourage everyone, don't feel like you're pigeonholed into anything. If in 4 years of high school, you can learn enough to be a math person, or learn enough to be a literature person, think about what you can do with 4 more years. You can pick up the other. And life is long. I want to hear someone with a better chance, but you'll have to shout.
Hey, thank you. So, what is your favorite part about math? Like how everything comes together and makes sense, or like what's your favorite part about math specifically?
So what's my favorite part about math? Is it like how everything seems to come together and make sense? I will say that some of the things that attract me most to math are the creativity of discovering a new way to see something. So I will say, I didn't particularly enjoy doing pages and pages of arithmetic problems. That actually isn't that much fun to me. But I really enjoyed thinking about some harder math problems. For example, I hear that maybe some people here might take an exam called the American Math Competitions, AMC, at some point life in the upcoming school year. This is an example of really hard questions where you can go ahead and get an F and it's fine. I really like that kind of environment, because if I'm not getting an F, then I'm not pushing myself. This is actually how I approach life. F, by the way, is like 60% or lower. These days in life, I try to do crazy things where your chance of success should be like 1%, like going and creating a movie about math. You know what I mean? So I love those situations, the challenge, coming up with a creative solution, maybe that other people didn't tell me how to do, but I got to come up with it myself. Was I the first one in the world to come up with it? Not necessarily. But that's just like how when you paint, you might not be the first person ever to think about painting things that way, but it was an expression of your own creative power. So that's actually what I love about math, the creativity and the challenge.
Thanks.
I think we can take one more question. I see the back row, really back row. Yes, please stand up and shout. We'll take 2 questions, okay? We'll take 2 questions. You and then one back. Yes.
All right, not to sound disrespectful.
Please be louder.
Not to sound disrespectful, there's one ability to passion.
Oh, actually, I'm really sorry, I can't hear you. Is there a way that we can get to the microphone? What?
Is one's ability to learn math, is it determined by his background or race by any chance?
Did you say is the way you learn math determined by background? Is that the
One's
question?
ability or passion.
Is one's ability to learn math determined by your background? Are you asking if math has some connection to genetics?
Yeah.
Yes. So the answer to that question is not yes. It's no. I don't think so. So I think, actually I've heard this statement from other people before, which I think is really true. It is true that everyone has different potential in many different abilities. Okay? This is true. And that's probably got something to do with genetics. There are different potentials. It is also true that virtually nobody on Earth reaches their full potential. Because that is actually where all of the energy, all of the time, all of the trying comes in. Let me give this following example. When I was in high school and college, I actually used to go to the gym to lift weights. Why not? That was fun, right? You can't tell anymore. But anyway, so as I was doing this, at the beginning when you start, you're like, wow, this is so hard. And at a certain point, you can actually start to lift a little bit more, and you don't look that different. And what's actually happening physically is that your brain is learning that it can push your muscles a little bit more. Because at the beginning, if you're not exerting yourself to full, your brain controls the amount that you push yourself because it doesn't want to hurt you by accident, right? So basically, your brain starts to discover, these muscles I can actually use more than 30%, more than 40%. I can start using them to 70%. The same is true actually in math and in thinking about science and in thinking in general. A lot of the times at the beginning, we're used to doing things maybe by remembering it's usually this way and there's applying. That doesn't heavily use your thinking muscle, use your thinking ability. But when you start to really push that thinking ability, you start to realize that you can actually push through more and more and more. So the answer to the question is, there is some genetic limit, but I think almost nobody in the world hits that anyway. And so actually everyone here has the potential to actually rise beyond what you may even have imagined you could do mathematically. I personally discovered this myself when I worked with an extremely good PhD advisor. We're good meant that he pushed us hard. His background was one where there were very heavy expectations, but he would also give a lot of help. I never knew what it meant to work hard until I learned with him. In fact, I spent 2 summers afterwards working at a hedge fund in New York City, financial services. That felt like a vacation compared to working with him. If you know anything about the financial services industry in New York, this gives an idea. So basically, there's a limit, but most people haven't reached it. Push harder, and you'll go very, very far. One last question. In the back was the one who had stood up too. Please stand up and be loud.
Do you think your desire of pushing yourself comes from creativity, or your creativity comes from your behavior of pushing yourself?
Oh no. Do I think my desire of what? Loud.
Pushing yourself.
Do I think my desire to push myself comes from
Your creativity.
my creativity?
Or your creativity is made by pushing yourself.
Or my creativity is made by pushing myself. Okay, let me sum this up by saying, in math, we usually try to break things apart into the main dimensions. This is actually what we're doing. We're trying to see, is the creativity and the seeking challenge, are they basically the same? I thought about this, I think they're actually different, but I mean, this is like psychology or philosophy or something, but I'll just close by saying, why do I do what I do? I've thought about this. It's actually because ever since maybe I was in middle school, I think I identified that there were three things that I really, really liked to do, three dimensions, and I just keep driving them. One was people. I loved helping people. I loved seeing if people appreciated something I did for them. I loved making people smile. And the more the better, so thank you all for coming to this one. So that was the people one, right? The second one was I loved challenge. Challenge in the sense that I wanted to know that what I was doing was not actually possible for me before, and so I have the sense that I'm beating my records. It's not about beating other people, it's about beating your records. The same thing that drives mountain climbers to say, I've climbed that summit, so the next interesting one is that, and that one, and that one, and that one. And you don't stop until you keep going and going and going. That's, in the sense, it's too bad there's the highest peak in mountain climbing, but there isn't in human life. So this is the challenge dimension. And the third one was I loved creative, analytical strategy and thinking. Which is back to this creativity idea. I like to create new ideas, and hopefully it was something where I can say, you know, I made my mark on a thinking process. These were the three things that I just kept chasing after. They brought me to all sorts of activities, from the debate team to, I guess, public speaking now, to starting a social enterprise, to trying to coach a national math team. But I've stayed true, in some sense, to these three dimensions. I encourage everyone to introspect and to think about, what are your key dimensions that motivate you? Once you know what drives you, you also will become unstoppable to achieve those particular goals. And maybe the last piece is to hopefully try to align those with something good that might help the world. The world does need your help. Thank you, everyone.